Anyone can add contrast to a photo, but true control comes when you dodge and burn with intent. In this tutorial, I'll show you a powerful method for sculpting the light using tone curves and luminosity masks. I'll be using Luminar Neo, but this method holds up for Lightroom, Photoshop, or any photo editor that supports curves and luminosity masks. There are a few issues with the native dodge and burn tool, so let's take a quick look at what they are, and then I'll demonstrate how this method helps us overcome all of them. And once you know this technique, I think it's going to change the way you edit forever. Right, let's get into it. The first issue I have with the dodge and burn tool is the lack of masks. So if I wanted to intensify the brightness just on this hillside here, we've got a really tough time identifying where we want that brightening effect so it doesn't bleed over into the shadow side here. The next issue we have is to do with saturation. If I start painting over the mountain range here, you can see how the blues in the mountain quickly become oversaturated. We want our dodge and burn effect to allow us to control the brightness in our photo without changing that saturation level. The third issue is to do with under and overexposing our photo. Let's suppose we really want to brighten an area up. The problem is the more we go over with this tool, as you can see, there's no way to stop us over brightening those pixels. And the same is true when we build up a darkening effect. It's very easy to push our pixels to pure black, and we just don't want that. And the fourth issue is once we've actually laid down our effect into the photo, there's no way to actually control the nuance of that effect other than with this overall amount slider. And that's going to change the intensity of both the dodge and the burn pixels all at once. It's a really unrefined way to control the effect. Right, let's start to explore the technique that's going to save us from all of those issues and have a quick reminder as to why we dodge and burn in the first place. What are we even trying to achieve? So if we look at this grey circle here, this can represent an object in our photo that just lacks form. It's very flat, well, completely flat, no dimensionality whatsoever. So how could we, as photo editors, make it look like this? Well, it's very easy to do with dodge and burn. Let me show you how. So the first thing we're going to do is set up our curve. And what I want to do is darken down the bottom edge of this circle. So all I'm going to do is grab a point on my curve and bring that down. As you can see, that is darkening everything in our photo. And this is where our masking comes in. I just jump into the masking section, come to luminosity, which is just another word for the brightness. And then I'm just going to click on the circle. So that is going to select our circle for us. But you can see that the background gray is also selected as well. So all we need to do is just bring these handles in either side, and that's just going to tighten up the range that is selected. So you can see that as I move this range, we can select either the background or move it back and select just the circle. And Luminar is able to make that selection because we have two different brightness values. So now we have this selection made, we're going to jump back to the actual adjustments themselves. And so now when we change this curve, you can see that we can either brighten things up or darken it down. So if we leave it nice and dark, the next step of the process is to get a brush and use it in erase mode and just chisel away the effect from where we don't want it. So I'm going to have a nice big soft brush here, and I'm just going to start to take it away from the areas of the circle where I don't want to have that shadow. And just like that, we've burnt down the bottom edge of that circle. So that's our burn component. What about the brightening, the dodge effect? Well, we just again open up a new instance of the develop tool, brighten up that curve. And the great thing about using the curve is we're able to avoid this overexposed look that we got with the traditional dodge and burn tool, and we can set the very brightest point that we want this to have. And this time I don't even need to worry about the luminosity mask. I can just come straight in with my brush, and this time I'm going to paint it in positively only where I want it. So I'm going to click in the top right of the circle, and I can do the same again. And you can see that I'm building this up with a strength of about a third at 36%. Click again and click again, and now we have a little highlight area as well. So before and after, I have bled over the edge just a little bit, and it's using the luminosity mask that allows us to avoid that. If we wanted to add a shadow in, again, all we need to do is set the brightness value that we want for the shadow at the very darkest point. We then come into our masking section and choose luminosity. By clicking on the background this time, it's going to select those background gray pixels. And now I just need to come into my brush, choose erase, and then with a nice large brush, I'm just going to quickly erase it from the areas I clearly don't want it. So I'm just going to use the brush in erase mode to take away this effect from anywhere I don't want it, leaving a shadow underneath the sphere. And then we have a very rough and ready shadow underneath the ball, which I don't feel is dark enough. And this is the beauty of working this way, because we can now come in and actually make that shadow more intense and darker than it was originally. So as you can see here, the main point of using dodge and burn is to control the lighting in our scene. One mistake that I see a lot of people make with dodge and burn is to assume that what is already bright in your photo should be made brighter and what's dark, the shadows, should be made darker. That's not necessarily the case. As you can see here, we were using a completely grayscale circle, and it was our ability as photo editors to sculpt that light the way that we wanted. If you just want your highlights brighter and your shadows darker, you may as well just add some contrast to your photo, but we want to be more refined than that. So let me show you in a real example how we apply this technique. So let's revisit this mountain ridge line of a photo I took locally here in Canterbury, New Zealand. And before we start doing anything, we want to identify what it is we want to achieve with our dodge and burn effect. So I want to draw attention to that central undulating ridge line. I love that contrast between the highlight and the shadow. On the right hand side of the ridge, we have some beautiful undulation going on, but it's kind of getting lost in the shadow. So wouldn't it be great if we can use dodge and burn to revitalize that area? Not only do we have highlights on the central peak of the mountain, we also have highlights scattered around the edge of our frame. And that can be a little bit distracting when we want our viewer to look directly at the main focal point of the image. So let's use dodge and burn to darken down some of those distracting highlights. And as a final step, I'd like to embellish a sunny haze coming from that top left-hand side to really give us a sense that that light is pouring into our photo. Let's give ourselves a really quick foundational starting point using Luminar Neo's auto adjust feature. And we'll also add a smidge of structure AI just to help us more clearly identify the differing tones in the image. And because we're primarily concerned with the brightness values in this photo, I am going to convert this to black and white so it's easier to see that. And now by changing the luminance based on the color that did exist in the photo, we can actually craft a little bit of a Kickstarter in our contrast. So you can see by brightening up the yellow and red and bringing down the blue, we can actually build in a bit more contrast into that black and white. So the first thing I want to do is dodge or brighten the area where the sun is hitting the mountain here. So I'm going to come to the develop tool. And before I start making any adjustments to the curve, what I'm going to do is come to the masking section so that I can clearly identify where I want this effect applied. And now Luminar's analyzed our photo. All I need to do is click on the area that I want to be selected. And as I click in slightly different tones, you can see that the mask adapts accordingly. I just want a nice broad mask that selects most of this area and little of the shadow. Something like that looks pretty good. So I'm going to come out of that now, come into the adjustments now that I have my mask selected, and watch this. As soon as I put a point on the curve and start raising that up, you can see that we can brighten or darken that particular area of the photo. And that is a really nice refined way to control dodge and burn. So the key here is to not overexpose those pixels. We don't want them going to pure white like they are here. So the way to check that is to press J on your keyboard, and that's going to give you those highlight warnings. So wherever you see red, we've gone to the danger zone, it's pure white. That's no good. We want to just bring the point on the curve down until those red pixels disappear. Okay, so now we have our brightening effect that is added to the develop stack. But we're not done yet. That's not good enough. Before and after is not very precise. So what we want to do is erase that effect from the area we don't want it. So jumping back into masks, grab your brush in erase mode. And to get the job done nice and quickly, we want to have a nice big brush, and we can just take that effect from everywhere we don't want it. And one of the beautiful things about using masks in this way is we don't have to have an all or nothing. What we can do is just have a little bit of it. See, I've changed the strength of my eraser. I've brought it down to about 1/3, and now I can start removing that effect so we have a little bit of it, but not as much as we do over here. It may just be a little bit too much on that far side right there, so I'll just remove that just a little bit. Now let's toggle our before and after. Our before and after, it's a nice little pop through the middle of the photo. Okay, now let's work on enhancing this undulating shadow area through here. We're going to follow the same technique as before. We're going to come to masking and choose luminosity mask. From here, what we can do is either come in and click on the area we want to select, and then Luminar is going to define the tonal range, and what's inside this little square area here, that is selected at 100%, and then whatever happens between there and the edge of these little arrow points here, that is your taper off of the mask. So you can see as I push this further up, it's going to start to include more of those highlight pixels, and as I bring it in tighter, it's going to remove those pixels from the mask. So what I often do is use the picker to get me close to what I want, and then from there I may just manipulate the handles just so I'm getting a tighter selection over the exact area I'm after. Now we're going to be able to affect the areas that are a bit more red with more intensity. So now we have our selection, we jump back to the adjustments, and then we're going to put a point on the curve and start to bring that down. Now you can see with these clipping warnings turned on by pressing the J key again, you can see that we are going to pure black, and that is what I was saying can happen when you use the dodge and burn tool. There's no way to stop you going too far and sending things to pure black. But with curves, we can absolutely do that. As long as that curve doesn't drop down and touch that bottom line, you're not going to get those pure black pixels. So that's absolutely perfect. Let's have a look at the before and after. Before and after, so that's just with the luminosity mask. But if we feel like it's getting too intense in certain areas, again, we can come to the erase mode of the brush. I'm going to drop that intensity again. And I'm just going to remove it a little bit from this bottom left corner because I feel like that was going a little bit too dark. And maybe even over this side as well. All right, before and after. By the way, if you like the look of Luminar Neo for your editing and you don't have it yet, want to get it at an absolute steal, Skylum are currently running a summer sale. But not only that, they're doing a limited time discount of 20% on top of the summer sale. I'll put the link and the discount code in the description if you want to check it out. Now let's deal to those more highlighted areas around the edge of the frame. Same again, we're going to come into the develop tool here. And I'm just going to show you that we can work the other way around. We can actually set our curve up first. So what I'm going to do is, rather than drop down a point in the middle, which is going to darken things down. However, if we have particularly bright highlights like we do in this section here, they're not going to be affected because the pixel information for those is represented by this very top right of the curve. That's the very brightest pixels. So if we want to darken those, we need to grab that point and bring that down. Something like that is a good starting point. And you can see that we've just sort of flattened out our overall photo by reducing that contrast. So now we can come in with the mask, again, select luminosity, come in and just click on one of those highlight points. And what I would like to do this time is just bring this slider out so that we have a much smoother transition. If you have a very abrupt transition, things can start to look a little pixelated. So if you can get away with a smoother transition, that's better. So this is our before and after with the mask. Let's have a look how that's affecting the photo. Before and after, and now we just need to remove that effect from the areas we don't want it. So areas we want maximum contrast, like through the center here, we're just going to erase it from there. So I'm going to push my brush to 100 to make sure that we have none of that effect there. Now I'm going to drop the strength of that erase tool just so that I can bring back a little bit more information through the background and just let that effect just taper up from the very bottom of the frame. Before and after, before and after. It's just a subtle dulling down around the extremities of the photo. When I'm working with dodge and burn like this, I like to build my effect up in passes. So for example, the undulation, I still feel like we could bring more out in that. So I'm going to give that one more go. And I'm going to make a really contrasty curve here that's really going to push those highlight points, but keep those shadows nice and dark. Something like that. And now I'm going to come in with my mask again. Choose luminosity, you get the idea now. And I just want to apply this where the landmass is just catching a little bit more of that light. And picking the exact spot where that happens can be a little difficult. Something like that might be good. Right, let's pop out of this and see what that's done. Before and after, it's definitely brought up a lot of interest through there, but look what it's done to the rest of our photo. And that's why we need to tag team this masking effect. So it's not just the luminosity mask, but also erasing it from where we don't want the effect. So I'm going to jump to the erase mode and then just chip it away from everywhere I don't want, only leaving it in this key area here. Now, I alluded to the fact that we can't manipulate the changes of the dodge and burn tool once they're applied, whereas we can with this method. So if you feel like this is just a little bit too much, we don't even need to worry about the masking. All we need to do is just refine the curve. So if we feel like that's just too aggressive, we just drop the curve back a little bit to a point where we feel it looks better. Before and after, maybe even that's still just a little bit too much. Nice and subtle, that's the key, before and after. Now, before we get into the last step, I just wanted to say thank you to those of you who have been patiently waiting to get onto my course. I'm sorry it's been fully booked. I'm going to be opening up a few spaces in conjunction with this video. It's a case of first come, first serve. So if you want to fast track your photo editing learning from beginner to master with over 100 lessons similar to this, as well as files to follow along with, then check out the link in the description below. Limited spaces. Hope to see you on the inside. Right, let's carry on. And just as a final touch, I wanted to show you how we can use the sort of dodge and burn effect, but we don't necessarily have to include a luminosity mask. So what I'm going to do is create a bleached light look from this top left-hand corner. So I'm bringing up the shadow point so that we don't have any dark pixels anymore. And I'm also boosting up those midtones. Maybe even let's bring across these highlights so we get a very bright area as well. Now all we need to do is just mask that in, let's say with a nice soft radial gradient as if the sun is bleeding in from this top left-hand corner. And then we can just manipulate those control points to set the exact look of what we're after there. So before and after with that. And yes, we've bleached that out just a little bit. So we just need to bring that curve back just a little bit. And if you do feel like it's just a little bit too much over the land, we can just pull that back just a little bit. So it looks like it's softly feathering in some lovely evening light. I still feel like the brightness value of this area just in the bottom of the frame is a bit too bright. So after reviewing my image, I can come in and make another adjustment again with that luminosity selection. Come in and click on this area down here. We can expand that selection if we want to, just so we can get a little bit more feathering through there. Come back to the adjustment. And now I'm just going to bring down the brightness level of that curve, set it up the way I want before and after. I'm only focusing on this area here. I don't care what's going on in the rest of the photo because I'm going to come in with my brush, erase, 100% strength, quickly knock it back from that area. And now I can just start to remove it with a little bit more finesse so that it feathers in from the bottom here. That's a subtle change down there, but I really feel like it just helps to hold our viewer's eye in the frame in the important part. And then if we want to do some standard dodge and burn where we're just darkening down some other areas in our photo, we can absolutely do that just by setting up the curve the way we want it. Come into masking, brush, have the strength fairly low, and we can just paint this effect in. So if I really want to suggest the fact that the light is coming over from the left-hand side, you can darken down the right-hand side, and that's just going to help with that illusion. I've just loaded the original black and white version over the top so that we can see where we came from as a black and white conversion. And this was our dodge and burn edit. Literally, that's all we've done, dodge and burn to take it from this into this. So once you've done your heavy lifting with dodge and burn, you can always come in and add some of Luminar's other really great tools for black and white. So we could add a bit of dramatic if we wanted to, pop in some of my favorite, the mystical tool, just to soften off some of those harder edges before and after. And again, if we look at where we came from with a very flat black and white image to how we were able to sculpt that with a more advanced dodge and burn technique, I think this is a really nice improvement that we were able to take full control over. Earlier, I promised you a solution to the oversaturation that we can get from the traditional dodge and burn tool. However, using a black and white photo isn't a very good way to demonstrate that. So let me bring up a really cheesy photo of Muggins here so I can show you how easy it is to solve this problem. All right, we can see on this guy's forehead, which is, to be fair, more of a 5 head, we are overexposed. So to fix that, one way to do that is what we were just looking at before, and that is dodge and burn. So if we grab the curves and bring that down so we're darkening the area that we want to address, you can see that we're introducing all this additional tomato color to an already tomato face. So we're going to go to masking, luminosity. We're going to select the area we want, and I want to have a really nice soft transition. So I want to expand the fall off from that area. And now we have our mask. We jump back to adjustments, and you can see that we've darkened down the problematic area, but also introduced all that color as well. And just note, we do not need to be as aggressive as what we are with this curve. I'm just doing it to demonstrate the issue more clearly. So with that additional saturation, all we'd need to do is come into the color section of the tool and just grab the saturation slider and bring that down to a point where it's just a little bit more believable. We can also adjust the temperature as well. So if we feel like there is too much red in Tomato Man, we can actually push that more towards the greeny color and take away some of that magenta. And then when you've got that set up the way you want, all you'd need to do is come in with your brush with that erase mode and just refine your mask like that until you get the before and the after. We're able to drop down the brightness level of the 5 head and also keep the color more accurate. And don't forget, if we feel like we've gone too far with this adjustment, we can just come in and adjust that curve. It's fully editable after the event, which is really, really nice. So don't forget, if you want to get hold of Luminar Neo, there is a discount code in addition to the summer sale. So that's a really big saving. Also, if you would like to join my course, we have some limited spaces available at the time that this video is launched. If you don't manage to get onto it, you can always join the waitlist and be notified the next time some spaces are available. If you'd like to watch another video where I show how we can sculpt the light very easily with a different technique, it's a tool inside Luminar Neo with a bit of a hidden functionality. It's quite a clever, cool little hack. You can check that out in that video right there. Hope to see you in that one. Bye-bye for now.